Major support for these broadcasts is provided by Bank of America Merrill Lynch and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by AVR Realty Company, LLC, All Nation Renovation, Ackman Ziff Real Estate Group, Bingham McCutcheon, LLP, Briarwood Organization, Capital One Bank, Cassidy Turley, C.B. Richard Ellis, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, Cushman and Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Eastern Consolidated, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Friedman, LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova, Burns and Giantomasi, Goldman Properties, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Corming Communities, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Newmark Knight Frank, RAL Development Services, The Spandrel Group, LLC, Site Comply, Sterling and Sterling, Stonehenge Partners, Triangle Equities, The Wickoff Group, Urban American.
So here we are in the fall of 2011, my 11th season also, with certain people who have been with me since the first season. And we really, on the first show of the season, I had Ofer Yardeni so positive on the state of the residential that I didn't believe that happy days are here again. But today I brought together 3 residential developers and the banker to provide their insights on where they see the residential market in New York City. My guests, they include Jeffrey Levine, who truly has been with me since the first season in 2001, who is the chairman and CEO of Douglaston Development and Levine Builders, Joel Breikoff, a partner at Alchemy Partners, David Von Spreckelson, who is the president of Toll Brothers City Living, and needless to say, the man who's giving these guys some money, Peter Darcy, who is the Group Vice President in charge of commercial real estate for M&T Bank in the New York City region. So, banker, tell me, is there money around for people like these guys?
Certainly is. We've, just by way of background, we have about $5 or $6 billion in portfolio in New York City. We've lent approximately $1.2 billion so far this year, which puts us about on pace with last year. A lot of that has been for a substantial amount for residential development projects. So coming from our side, yes. For condominium finance, we have done several condominium projects this year that we're one of the few. There are not many institutions lending for condos. If you're building an 80-20 residential building, you have a decent basis in the land, there's plenty of banks to finance that today.
Mr. Developer, is there money today for you?
For well-conceived projects, there is absolutely money today. Obviously, it's not the same money that was available 4 years ago. Loan to cost is down in the 65 to 70% category, whereas years ago you were seeing 85s. Those days are gone, but we have to live in the days we're in today.
So what do you want to develop? Where do you see the market? I mean, is there a market? I mean, Toll Brothers City Living, a great company, publicly held entity, all they do is build condos. And they've done some great jobs, and you have a couple of jobs in the pipeline now, new ones and other ones being done over there. Joel, basically that's all you do also is condos in the market. How do the two of you, and then we'll get back to you, Jeff, how do the two of you look at the condo market today for existing product, which you're bringing out or you have today? And then how do you see the future?
Well, we have two projects we're selling. One, 810th Griffin Court. It's about 100 apartments. We're about 50% sold. And the ISIS condominium at 77th and 2nd, we're about 55, 60% sold. Sales are steady. In fact, prices have gone up substantially since the 0% to 15% sold days.
Now, are these numbers what you expected when you originally pro forma the jobs, or are they?
The recent numbers are actually close to pro forma, if not in some cases higher. But quite frankly, the earlier sales, the people who got in early got better deals, and I think that's been the trend probably the last couple of years. And then in general, as you get more sold out, there's more critical mass in the building. More people feel comfortable.
Who's buying? Who's buying? What's the profile of your purchaser?
Well, we have two demographics. At 10th Avenue, it's generally first-time buyers. It's a slightly younger demographic. Our average size is probably 1,100 square feet, so you have a lot of young couples or single people. We're getting more and more of the 2 bedrooms sold now and 3 bedrooms. And then at the ISIS, it's more of a family neighborhood on the Upper East Side. So those are typically families with
And how about getting mortgage financing for these people? Or the availability, or is it getting a little tighter? And the limits are changing October 1st and so on?
It was challenging, quite a bit challenging, and then people have stepped up even into the 0% to 20% sold range, with a lot of legwork on our side. In general, I think financing is eased up a bit. So I think, again, as you get more sold out, the doors open wider as far as different lenders coming in.
There's no question. Once you prove your own comps with your own sales and those deals have closed, they provide the basis for other lenders.
We'll get to you and your sales in a second. David, your deals.
Yeah, we're finishing up sales on 2 projects that we opened basically the day that Lehman tanked. So we're getting through those. One is in Williamsburg, one is in Murray Hill. Murray Hill, we've got about 4 units left out of 128, and in Williamsburg, we've got about 60 units left.
And how close to your projections of what you expected to get?
It's, this has been 2.5 years, so I mean, there was a time when the discounts were probably around 20%,
and
but they've been dialed back to closer to between 10 and 5%. And then we have a couple of projects that we're going to be opening
Great, you have
this
one
month.
Opening up in
One in
Dumbo?
Dumbo, which is 65 units, and one on the Upper East Side, 65th and Lex, which is only 22 units.
And so who's your market in Dumbo, and who's your market in Lex?
Yeah, Dumbo's young families. It's a little older, a little more mature, a little more well-heeled than Williamsburg. And Upper East Side is the Upper East Side, where, anticipate families.
So they're
well-heeled families.
They're much larger units.
Yeah, most of the units are large. There's 2s, 3s, 4s. I think there's a 5-bedroom penthouse.
And you in Williamsburg, the Edge?
Well, obviously, we have, again, followed the demographics. Our buyers in Williamsburg, our renters at the Oman West Chelsea are typically from the age of 25 to 40, Generation X young people. Typically, they are living together, not necessarily married. And we've had great success in this market in spite of the downturn. Yes, there was a huge problem in the aftermath of Lehman, going back as 3 years today, I think. But we built back and regained not only the sales prices, because we're selling at our original pro forma numbers in Williamsburg as we speak, and we're renting at our original pro forma rentals today in West Chelsea. At one point in both cases, we were 20% below those points. So again, New York City has fared better than the rest of the country for the most part. We're at the worst of the Great Recession. We saw a 20% reduction in sales and rental prices, and we've retraced that, and we're back to where we were before.
So here's a question, for all of you and also for the banker amongst us. August comes around, downgrading of the government, the stock market's in turmoil. Did people stop buying, or they slowed down?
August was one of the best months for sales we've ever experienced in Williamsburg. We did 34 deals with an average price in excess of $915 a foot. Low interest rates again, the downgrading of our currencies was secondary to the fact that interest rates were at 60-year lows. So I think people were cognizant of that and were out there buying.
You know, you bring up an interesting point, and I'd like everyone else's thought on it. Someone was saying to me on a show that I did the week before that, you know, with these low interest rates, foreigners, okay, who are probably not the purchasers in your property in Williamsburg, but who might be the purchasers on your Lexington Avenue property, are coming in here and saying, hey, I'm taking my money out of Greece, or I'm taking my money out of France, or I'm taking it out of Germany. If I could buy an apartment in New York City, you know, I know that I'm going to have stability over here. So I'd rather see that. Have you seen the foreign
we have
investors?
on our interest list for the Upper East Side project a lot of foreign names on that, and we anticipate a lot of foreign people buying units there.
So we've looked through the numbers on some of the projects we've looked at from a projection standpoint, and we've traced it to about 10 to 20% on some of the higher end projects are coming from foreign investors. And I definitely agree today, the same concept of every institutional investor wanting to be in these gateway liquid markets, it's the same concept. I think a lot of the liquid international buyers want to have apartments in New York City.
Now, people have said, especially the week before when I did an investment show, that land prices are reaching levels of 2007 in many cases. Do you see that? I mean, you've been
Not
buying
yet.
property.
I mean,
It's
getting
sad, but
close in
true.
some places, but I mean, I don't know how many deals are getting done at those prices.
It would appear to me that there are speculators out there who are seeing the improvement in both sales and rental values and are trying to be opportunistic and overpaying for land now, thinking that it will continue to improve. I think that's a very big risk.
Let's be realistic. The two gentlemen sitting over here were very interested in a very nice site on the east side. Now, why were you so interested in this site?
Well, there aren't a lot of sites that are great in New York City right now, in Manhattan, ready to go, 421A, full benefits. But, you know, by the same token, it didn't get run up to the numbers, the 2007 numbers. I mean, it went for less than $350 a foot.
It's a solid site. We looked at it. We took a hard look at it. You know, ended up coming out of bankruptcy court. Yeah, I think that site probably a few years ago might have gone for $400 a square foot.
Now, where are construction costs today, Jeffrey?
Well, you know, it depends on whether you're speaking union or non-union, but the reality is across the board, construction prices, in my opinion, have retraced themselves anywhere from 10 to 25%. The lower number being on the non-union work of a mid-rise.
So you're able to, you can buy your construction at a lower price.
You can buy your construction at a lower price without question today.
But what happens with regard, and Peter, I'm going to ask you, you sell your condos, and you sell your condos, and you sell your condos, all with tax incentives. So someone goes into Williamsburg, what do they have, a 20-year?
25 years.
25 years. Dumbo?
Dumbo is 10 years.
10 years.
Manhattan's 10 years.
10 years. But people look at this, you know, it's 10 years, tax abatement, and they look at it today. 30 years ago, you know, there were no taxes, but 30 years later, our taxes were crazy and you can't afford it. But people don't always look at it in that manner.
Yeah, but I have to tell you, today, I think it's not only that the buyers are more savvy about looking at the numbers, but their lending institutions are far more focused. As the lending market for sales has tightened
Let's
up.
ask the banker. When someone comes to you, do they, you know, and if the property does not have a tax abatement because there are no more 421A tax abatements, how do you look at a transaction? I mean, that somebody, you know, because when people look at their monthly situation, they look at the maintenance, they look at their taxes, and they look at their principal. If the taxes are $1,000 a month and the other taxes are $100 a month, you know, it's a big difference.
We look at affordability. It's something we look at very closely for the end user. We look at that relative to the size of the units and the demographic that they're aiming for, and the monthly expense and what that correlates to an income. And if that is not something that makes sense, without a tax abatement, it's a big difference. It's a huge factor. but future developments, unless you have certificates or you have some legacy foundation,
Or
don't
you
have
do,
them.
or you do an 80-20 affordable situation.
Yeah.
The 80/20s, without the tax abatement, forget about it. And even with the tax abatement today, you're looking at $75 a foot rents or north of that.
Yeah, but there's a much more important situation. It's wonderful to say we have tax abatement, but it's just a masking agent. I think ultimately real estate is at the tip of the spear when it comes to the issue of the cost of doing business in New York and the rest of the country, for that matter, because we cannot continue to develop residential apartment buildings when taxes can be as much as $25 a foot, which is a third of your revenue if you're collecting 75. If your rent is only $60, you can be upwards of 40%. We become tax collection agents, and I think we have to address the problem of real estate taxes if this great city is going to continue to be a great city. It's a very important subject.
On the condo side, if you don't, we looked at 35 West 15th Street. We assumed at the time there would be no tax abatements for us, and I think we assumed that, an adjustment of value down about between 3 and 6%. And there is a tax abatement program is in effect. It's been modified somewhat. It's not as advantageous as it was, but it's meaningful. But yes, infrastructure-wise, that's a long-term issue for not just us, but everyone in the country.
How do you look at the boroughs? I mean, when you're looking at a loan today, I mean, Williamsburg is hot, Dumbo is hot, Brooklyn Heights is hot. I mean, any thoughts about Queens? I mean, because they're a good friend of ours, a wonderful guy, Josh Muss. They're having difficulties in Flushing, which was very surprising because the Asian community over there, everyone figured
They couldn't get end loans, though, in that particular project, from what I understand. But we're financing a couple projects in Long Island City today in the waterfront, the East Coast site. We have...
Are they condos or rentals?
Rentals, market rate rental buildings. We're open to them. It's the same thing we're looking at. Who's doing it? Are they well capitalized? Can they take some bumps in the road if the market dips or if construction has issues? It's the same thing. So if it's the right sponsor, the right amount of equity, they've assembled the site in an advantageous way, absolutely, we'll take a look at it. We'll look at Jersey City for the right people, Newport, et cetera.
Have you ventured out of the two boroughs that you've lived with over your last 18 to 20 years of business?
We've looked. We've done stuff in Queens a long time ago, but we just took over the site at 340 Core Street, Carroll Gardens, which, again, would be our second project, ground-up project in Brooklyn. We love Brooklyn. We've looked at other parts of Brooklyn, Williamsburg, being a good example.
People have been mentioning that Bushwick, Fort Greene.
It's a new Soho from the 70s.
It's an extension of Williamsburg.
Right. What they're calling it Williamsburg East.
Right.
What do you think, Jeffrey?
I think it's a natural evolution relative to the L train. I mean, a very important factor to young people today is transportation to employment. And there are some places that the L train in particular runs across Manhattan, intersects with every north-south bus and train, so you can get almost anywhere to employment. The same thing can be said of areas up in Long Island City in some cases. And I think Greenpoint will also evolve.
I think it's tough for Condo there right now, though, without 421A. I mean, we did a project in Long Island City a number of years ago, and I brought stuff from there all the time. And the land there would almost have to be free to make a project pencil out for me without 421A. I don't think you can sell units. I think you're going to be in the 550 to 600 square foot range on the sellout without 421A, and it makes it tough to do a project there, tough to take that risk. I mean, we're looking primarily in Manhattan right now. There's just more upside. The cost to build is the same. It just makes more sense.
Couldn't finance a condo in tertiary areas anyway.
Peter?
It's a lot more difficult to finance, absolutely. We've done almost everything we've done on the construction side is in Manhattan.
Well, even condos in Manhattan, if you take a look, they were aggressively pursuing the piece on 3rd Avenue because of the fact that it was under 100,000 square feet. It's not as much to be sold and absorbed in a given period of time, because we see that the cycles of boom and bust, the recessions, are coming and going much quicker now. So it's very difficult to do a condominium of 300 or 400 units going forward when you don't know where you're going to be when you get there.
You also need infrastructure. You need rental housing. You need market rental housing before you even dare do a condo. And there are people who have done condos in standalone situations where there's no rental housing, and they've lost those buildings. So it's important to know as a developer that you've got the excitement and the potential customers in the rental housing pool of a market.
We talk about Brooklyn, we talk about other things, but something I have never heard from any of you in this. I mean, Peter's different. I haven't heard from any of you about talking about developing either rental or for sale in Lower Manhattan. Why not?
We've avoided locations where there's a lot of sites and a lot of big sites where you could potentially have a lot of product, and that's one of the places. There's a lot of construction down there. It's messy down there.
More than that, I had the privilege some years ago acting as a construction manager at 90 West Street, which was the restoration of a landmark Cass-Gilbert constructed building over 100 years ago, which was structurally and cosmetically damaged by the collapse of the Trade Center. And while it was a thrill to have done it, we're glad to have brought it back into service as 400 rental units. The reality is that living there, was an article in the Times recently, is very difficult because of the ongoing boom of construction, fueled in part by the Liberty bonds and the work that's going on down there. So living down there, while it's improving, and I understand it's the largest growth of residential occupants of almost any community in the city, is because the modified J51 tax abatement for the rehab of the older office buildings into residential, the new construction that was spurred by both Liberty bonds and other measures, has made the area populated but not yet amenified, if I can create a word, by the type of recreational retail that people want where they live. So the combination of construction, the lack of the evolution of retail, and I realize there are many people who will argue with me about that, mostly those people who have developments down there. I think in the long term, it's going to be an incredible place, but it's a long-term view.
Condos there have been some high-profile condos that have struggled, and we always felt that it's not a neighborhood yet, although it's certainly evolving, and certainly in 5 to 10 years. I mean, Tribeca was nothing 20 years ago, and it couldn't understand that at all, and of course it became Tribeca.
And what about the Hudson Yards banker? What about the buildings on the far west side? When I mean, TF Cornerstone, Rock Rose, Silverstein, Litwin are great owners and developers, but when you walk over there on from 35th Street to 42nd Street between 10th and 11th Avenue, you're still in the vast wasteland. I mean, they're beautiful apartment houses, but there are no amenities. There's nothing there.
Well, it's interesting. You say there's no organic amenities in the neighborhood, so they've over-amenitized the buildings. And if you walk in and go through some of the amenities in the buildings that you just mentioned, they're spectacular. That has, because there's such a low vacancy rate, drawn tenants at really decent rates, and they've absorbed. We were in at least one of the projects you mentioned, and it absorbed tenants in a really tough market really well. I would say with 8th Avenue being the furthest west subway line you have, once you start getting over to 10th Avenue, you're really far from transportation. Those are very long blocks.
You realize that we're shortly going to have the 7 train right out to 34th and 11th.
Yes, that'll change.
So it is evolving. The West Side Yards are coming. So while I do agree it hasn't yet got there, it's coming.
I agree.
Also, 9th Avenue has matured, and 10th Avenue, we have a project at 54th and 10th. You've got the Mercedes house that's being built between 10th and 11th, and there's definitely, the infrastructure is to be created by the rental developers, who then attract the retailers and then the restaurants, and then the condos basically fill in thereafter with smaller projects. And so we're looking carefully at places like downtown. We looked at Battery Park City for a few jobs as well. But I think
Battery Park City stopped. I don't believe there are any more development sites in Battery Park City
some broken condominiums. Oh. And again, you have to be careful there as well. It's a market unto itself, very much so.
I was going to say the most exciting thing about all of these areas is that as a result of the financial collapse that occurred 4 years ago now, there's been no great new development. There have
Right,
been
so the
small projects,
so the
large
projects could be
projects, but not
absorbed.
many of them.
I mean, look, David's. I think the good example, when David opened up with the fall of Lehman on 33rd Street, and in Williamsburg, nobody, there was nothing around. But now that there's limited product, and it's good product, quality product, it's going to be there. I mean, look, 33rd Street always had made sense. I mean, you had NYU nearby, you had everything else. So, if you have the absorption, I mean, we didn't have the construction boom that we've had in the past. And we also don't have those banks who were giving to uncapitalized borrowers who were first-time borrowers. I mean, there's no more Fremont, there's no more Chorus, there's limited work for Building Bank and all the rest, So the person who said, I'm 30 years of age, I'm going to be a developer, they can't do it anymore. They have to do rehabs like you did when you started. How's retail in your buildings doing?
No, again, with the improvement of occupancy by both sales and rental, we're seeing the retail stepping up nicely. In Williamsburg, we're probably 75% leased up on the retail, everything ranging from the health and beauty HCVS to the daycare center to the wine bar. And we're talking to some exciting new restaurants, which are the last ones to believe that you've arrived. They need to actually feel it because those typically are the most risky. So generally, I think retail is recovering.
Do you have any retail in the 2 developments or 3 developments?
At Northside Piers, we do, but our partners have it. In the first tower. In the second tower, we have 1 space, a restaurant space, and I think we're going to sign a lease
and what about
shortly.
What about in the Upper East Side?
Upper East Side, yes, but as part of the transaction, the previous developer kept the retail.
And what about 23rd Street?
23rd will have about 3,000 square feet on the corner.
Okay. So, I'm really happy that all of you have been here to celebrate the beginning of my 11th season. It's good to always have friends. And, I think the market is looking good. I think the combination of the lack of building over the last couple of years, the New York City economy is helping. And I think you've given us a pretty good indication on the state of the residential market. I'd like to thank Jeff Levine, Joel Breitkoff, David Von Spreckelson, and Peter Darcy. See you next week.
Major support for these broadcasts is provided by Bank of America Merrill Lynch and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's window company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by AVR Realty Company, LLC, All Nation Renovation, Ackman Ziff Real Estate Group, Bingham McCutcheon, LLP, Briarwood Organization, Capital One Bank, Cassidy Turley, C.B. Richard Ellis, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, Cushman & Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Eastern Consolidated, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova, Burns and Gian Tomasi, Goldman Properties, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Corming Communities, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Newmark Knight Frank, RAL Development Services, The Spandrel Group, LLC, Site Comply, Sterling & Sterling, Stonehenge Partners, Triangle Equities, The Wyckoff Group, Urban American.